You remember the smell first. Dry erase marker, sharp and chemical, clinging to your fingertips. A faint sweetness mixed with the dust of paper that's been stacked too long. The sound of fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. A faint hum you can't quite ignore. You're young, standing at the front of a classroom for the first time, and the air is too warm because the old radiator can't shut itself off. The desks look bigger than you expected, rows and rows of chipped laminate where someone carved initials with a compass. A single clock ticks above the whiteboard, steady, indifferent. That clock becomes your first enemy because you already know it doesn't move for you. It only moves for them. That tick becomes your soundtrack. You clear your throat, but your voice feels thin, almost swallowed by the stale air. Chalk dust lingers from the previous teacher's lesson, smeared in faint, half-erased lines. You wipe the board again, though it doesn't need wiping. Your hands tremble just enough for you to notice. They don't. They're slouched in chairs, eyes already drifting, waiting for you to prove you're worth their attention. And in that moment, you feel the weight of something invisible pressing down, the heat of the radiator, the smell of marker, the tick of the clock. They etch themselves into you, like the room is branding you before you even begin. Later, years later, you'll still hear that clock when you lie awake at night. You'll still feel marker ink staining your fingers even when you haven't touched a board in days. You'll still smell paper, stacks of it, assignments, tests, permission slips, invading your kitchen table, your weekends, your sleep. These become the motifs of your life. Ink, paper, clock. The world doesn't let you put them down once you've picked them up. At first, you thought this role would save you, that it would mean purpose, that it would be different from the offices your friends shuffled into, different from the factory lines your parents endured. Teaching was supposed to mean connection, meaning, a life not wasted. That's what you told yourself when you stayed up until 3 in the morning, highlighting textbooks you couldn't afford, drinking cheap coffee that burned your stomach raw. You told yourself it mattered. You told yourself you were building a future not just for yourself, but for them. The first time a student smiled and said thank you, you thought you'd been right. The first time a parent shook your hand and said you'd changed their kid's life, you carried that praise like armor. It felt like enough to cover the hours, the debt, the quiet meals alone after grading until midnight. But armor thins, praise fades, debt doesn't. And every morning, the clock waits for you. Every morning, the stack of papers grows higher than it was the day before. Every morning, the ink stains return, dark under your nails, no matter how hard you scrub. Still, you tell yourself you chose this, that it chose you. Because somewhere between the books you once loved and the voices of children who looked at you like you had answers, it became an obsession. You gave up weekends, evenings, pieces of yourself. You called it sacrifice, but really it was surrender, and no one stopped you. They clapped for you instead. They called you dedicated, passionate. They said you were made for this. You nodded, even as the ink seeped deeper into your skin. The classroom becomes your second home faster than you realize, though the word home feels wrong. You're never comfortable there. It's a space that demands more of you than it gives back. You spend nights hunched over lesson plans, scribbling in margins, rewriting instructions until they blur together. You chase ideas like they might save you from mediocrity. Like if you just make this worksheet sharper or that unit more relevant, the job won't feel so heavy. The smell of coffee becomes a constant companion, bitter and burned, the kind you drink because it's cheap, not because you like it. Your friends drift into jobs that leave them free at 5. You stay at your desk long after the last bell. The custodians sweep around you, and the silence feels louder than the chaos of 30 restless kids. You tell yourself it's proof of dedication. You forget to notice that no one's watching. The first real sacrifice comes quietly. You miss a family gathering, a cousin's wedding, because you couldn't step away from grading. You told yourself you'd go after finishing just one stack of essays, but the stack grew taller instead of shorter. By the time you looked up, the night had passed, and the clock on the wall ticked its way into another day. You promised yourself it wouldn't happen again. It did. The praise still comes in small doses. A student writes you a note in messy handwriting saying you're the only adult who listens. A parent calls you a gift. You feel something stir in your chest, relief or pride. You can't tell the difference anymore. You hold on to those scraps because they're rare and because without them, the hours collapse into nothing. Slowly, the motifs root deeper. Ink smudges your fingertips until you carry them like stains of devotion. Paper multiplies, mountains of it, sliding across every surface you own, making your kitchen table indistinguishable from your desk. The clock never softens. It ticks through lessons that drag, through staff meetings that bleed into twilight, through nights where you can't tell if you're awake or dreaming. You live inside that rhythm, trapped in its indifferent pace. Somewhere along the way, you convince yourself that obsession is passion, that staying later, pushing harder, erasing yourself in service to the role makes you noble. You laugh at the idea of balance, not because it's funny, but because it's unreachable. You wouldn't know what to do with balance if you had it. Your life contracts to the sound of chalk breaking in your hand, the squeak of a dry marker running out mid-sentence, the shuffle of restless feet on linoleum floors. You start carrying a bag that's too heavy, filled with papers you'll never finish grading. It bruises your shoulder, but you don't put it down. You spend Sundays preparing, every Sunday, until the calendar itself feels rigged against you. Friday nights are just a pause before Monday starts breathing down your neck again. The job doesn't stop at the classroom door. It follows you into the grocery store when you bump into a parent, into your car when you hear a song you once loved and think about how you used to have time for music, into your dreams when you're still rehearsing explanations for material no one will remember. You notice how people outside the profession romanticize it. They tell you summers off must be nice, like those weeks erase the months of exhaustion, like they aren't eaten up by training, planning, or working a second job to make the numbers fit. They tell you teaching is a calling, as though a calling makes the sacrifices less sharp. You nod and smile, too tired to explain, too tired to correct the fantasy. It's not that you don't care anymore. You care too much. You care so much it hollows you out. You care until your own life becomes secondary, until your own needs shrink small enough to fit into the cracks between bells. You tell yourself you chose this, but really it chose you. And once you said yes, the ink, the paper, and the clock fasten themselves to you like weights you'll never set down. The machine doesn't announce itself all at once. It seeps in piece by piece until you're surrounded. At first, it's the tools, a ring of keys clipped to your belt, heavy, clinking with every step, unlocking doors that always stick in their frames, an ID badge on a frayed lanyard, the picture already outdated, the lamination curling at the edges, the smell of ammonia in the hallway every morning, the sting in your nose as custodians scrub away yesterday's messes, a stack of attendance forms that never seems to shrink, paper thick as cardboard, corners tearing under the pressure of your fingerprints. Then come the numbers, percentages, averages, benchmarks, scores. They start as marks in red pen, small notations in gradebooks, then metastasize into spreadsheets, graphs, dashboards. Students become acronyms and test results. You become a line of data feeding into someone else's report. The machine digests you quietly. Every morning, the routine is the same. The clock hits 6:30 and you're already awake, body tuned to the schedule like an unwilling metronome. You pour coffee into a chipped mug, steam fogging your glasses, the bitterness pooling in your throat before you're even fully alert. The papers are waiting on the kitchen table, edges curling, ink smudges staining the wood. You pack them into your bag, even though you know they'll make the commute heavier. The drive is short, but the weight doesn't leave your shoulder even when you set the bag down. You unlock your classroom door. The hinges groan. The fluorescent lights flicker on with a buzz, casting everything in a cold, pale wash. The air is stale, heavy with chalk dust and the faint mold smell of an old building. Desks scrape across the floor as students trickle in, backpacks thudding down, gum snapping in their mouths. The day begins with the same bell it always does, shrill, metallic, cutting through whatever quiet you had left. The jargon wraps itself around you. Words that once felt professional now feel hollow. Differentiated instruction, learning outcomes, student growth targets. They spill from your lips in staff meetings, in lesson plans, in evaluations, until they stop sounding like language and start sounding like gears grinding. You memorize acronyms faster than names. You forget when you stop speaking in your own voice. The machine doesn't care about your fatigue. It only asks for more meetings after hours, where administrators click through PowerPoint slides in dimly lit rooms while you scribble notes you'll never use. More forms documenting interventions, accommodations, modifications, signatures required in triplicate. More duties that creep into your schedule. Hall monitoring, test proctoring, substitute coverage. Each one small enough to seem manageable, together enough to consume your time whole. Artifacts pile up. A red pen with ink that dries out mid-mark, forcing you to dig through drawers for another. A lesson plan binder so heavy it leaves impressions in the desk. A time clock beep in the office when you sign in, sharp and impersonal. Sticky notes littered with reminders. Call parents, log grades, prep quiz. Half-finished mugs of coffee abandoned around the room. Rings staining your desk. The smell of microwaved lunches reheated in the staff room. Plastic containers venting steam while you pretend to relax. Even the children become part of the machine. Their voices rise in waves, chatter, laughter, groans, the scrape of chairs, the snap of pencils breaking. You learn to sort the sounds without hearing them. You speak louder, softer, repeat instructions like a recorded loop. You manage behavior with a toolbox of strategies, scripted phrases, reward systems, consequences that feel flimsy in the face of real exhaustion. You teach, but half the time you're just trying to keep order. The machine thrives on order. The clock hangs above it all, steady and cruel. You glance at it every few minutes, willing the hands to move faster, only to feel them drag. The tick seeps into your bones, mocking your impatience. You can measure your life by its slow crawl. 45 minutes for a lesson, 30 for lunch, another 45, another, until the day folds into dismissal. Then comes the silence, eerie and incomplete, because your work isn't over. The papers wait again. The clock ticks on. By the time you leave the building, the hallways smell of cleaner again. The echo of your footsteps bounces off lockers dented by years of fists and kicks. The parking lot is mostly empty. Your car one of the last. You slide into the seat, hands still smudged with ink, shoulders aching from carrying too much. You sit for a moment, engine off, staring at your own tired reflection in the rear-view mirror. Then you drive home carrying the machine with you, the stack of papers sitting in the passenger seat like a silent companion. At night, you lie awake and hear the machine even when the world is quiet. You hear the clock ticking behind your eyelids. You see paper drifting in your dreams, assignments undone, lessons collapsing. You feel ink under your nails, a residue you can't scrub away. The motifs circle back, reminders that you've given yourself over to something that never stops consuming. And in the morning, you start again. The machine never sleeps, so neither do you. The first collapse doesn't come in a dramatic moment. It sneaks up, slow and patient, until one day you can't ignore it. It starts with your body. Your lower back aches in a way that no stretch fixes. A deep pull that lingers after hours of standing, bending over desks, crouching beside chairs. You tell yourself it's temporary, but then the ache spreads, crawling into your shoulders, stiffening your neck. You start waking up with headaches that feel like a clamp tightening behind your eyes. Ibuprofen bottles sit half empty on your nightstand, rattling when you shake them, a metronome of your decline. The collapse takes money too. You notice it when your paycheck arrives, neat numbers printed on paper, and you line them against bills. Rent, utilities, groceries, the student loan that never shrinks. What's left doesn't match the hours you give. You calculate and recalculate, but the math refuses to soften. 1 month you're short, forced to put groceries on a credit card, and the number stares back at you, $347.62. That debt lingers, growing interest like mold, spreading even as you keep paying. The collapse comes in betrayal too. You apply for a promotion, a small stipend role that would mean a few $100s more a month, a little air to breathe. You polish your resume, craft statements about leadership, describe the endless evenings you've already given. They nod, they smile, they thank you for applying. Then the job goes to someone else, someone newer, someone who plays the game better. You stand in the staff meeting, clapping politely, ink smudges still under your fingernails while the clock ticks overhead. Each clap feels like it belongs to someone else. The collapse is quiet, but relentless. You sit at your desk one evening, papers stacked high, red pen leaking onto your thumb. The radiator clicks and hisses, heat baking the air until you feel nauseous. The fluorescent lights hum. You glance at the clock, its second hand twitching forward, steady and merciless. You think about the years ahead, the sameness stretching out, and your chest tightens. It's not a panic attack, not yet, but something close. A reminder from your body that you're running out of space to keep pretending. You start to notice how paper feels heavier than it should, how the sound of the clock tick echoes louder than voices, how the ink stains on your hands look darker, harder to wash off. The motifs come back sharper, not symbols now, but burdens. You can't separate yourself from them. They've carved themselves into you. The first collapse isn't the end. It never is. You keep showing up because what else is there? But something shifts. You no longer believe the machine will give you back what it takes. You stop expecting fairness. You stop waiting for relief. The clock ticks anyway. The papers pile anyway. The ink stains anyway. And you begin to understand that this isn't a bad week or a bad year. It's the shape of the life you chose and the shape of the life that chose you. It comes when you least expect it, this small flicker of hope that feels like a second wind. A student, the one who usually slouches low in their seat and barely makes eye contact, hands you an essay that's more than passable. It's thoughtful, even moving. The words cling to the page with a weight you didn't think they were capable of. You underline a sentence, not with criticism but with something close to pride. For a moment, you feel it, the reason you started. Later, a parent thanks you in the parking lot, their voice breaking as they say you made their child believe they weren't stupid. The words pierce through the noise of exhaustion. They feel pure, unfiltered, like oxygen. You drive home lighter than usual, the bag of papers beside you still heavy, but easier to carry because the ache in your chest loosens for once. Even the clock seems to move differently that week. The days pass with less friction. The tick still echoes, but it feels less cruel, more like rhythm than punishment. You walk into the classroom with a touch of anticipation instead of dread. You catch yourself humming as you write notes on the board. The ink stains don't feel like marks of surrender. They look briefly like proof of work, of purpose. You imagine maybe you turned a corner. Maybe the machine is shifting, making space for you to breathe. You fantasize about balance, about finally learning to carry the weight without breaking. You picture yourself years from now, steady, seasoned, telling younger teachers it gets easier. You let yourself believe, if only for a moment. But the paper never stops multiplying. The essays stack higher, the reports pile thicker. One night, you find yourself back at the table at midnight, eyes burning, red pen dragging across endless paragraphs. The ink bleeds again, dark, seeping into your skin, and the pride of last week dissolves into the same fatigue. The clock ticks louder than ever, reminding you that time is indifferent, that hope is temporary. The student who gave you that brilliant essay misses the next 3 assignments. The parent who praised you sends a long, angry email when grades don't meet their expectations. The warmth evaporates, replaced by a cold draft that seeps through the cracks of every interaction. You realize the high was never a turning point. It was an intermission, a breath before the grind tightened again. And when the brief light fades, it feels worse than before because you saw what it might feel like if things were different. Because for a short stretch, the ink, the paper, the clock didn't feel like chains. And now they do again, heavier than ever. The grind doesn't announce itself in a single blow. It carves you down layer by layer, ledger lines you never agreed to keep. It begins with the body, standing too long on floors that never forgive, the kind of linoleum that reflects the harsh fluorescent lights until your eyes sting. Your shoes wear thin faster than you can afford to replace them, the soles flattening, the arch of your foot collapsing until every step feels sharp. Your shoulders knot into ropes from carrying the bag, strap digging the same groove into your skin day after day. Your lower back throbs when you lean over a desk too long, the pain radiating down your legs, a low electric current that makes climbing stairs feel heavier than it should. By evening, your wrists ache from gripping pens, the tendons inflamed from hours of marking, red ink clots at your cuticles, impossible to scrub clean. You sit at the end of the night with a bottle of ibuprofen rattling like dice, the chemical smell rising before the chalk dust even clears from your throat. The mind follows. It doesn't collapse all at once. It frays. You wake at 3 a.m., heart racing, thinking of the lesson you forgot to adjust, the parent email you haven't answered, the student you couldn't reach. Sleep becomes fractured, shallow, never enough. Even when you rest, your mind loops through what-ifs and should-haves, a reel that refuses to end. The clock ticks in the background, louder in the dark than during the day. You imagine it mocking you, slicing the hours into smaller pieces you can't recover. You try to read a book, the kind you once loved, but the words blur. You try to watch a movie, but your brain keeps grading sentences, rewriting explanations. Your thoughts no longer belong to you. They belong to the machine. Money is always there, a ledger written in permanent ink. The paycheck arrives, numbers neat, insufficient. Rent eats most. Loans siphon the rest. Groceries bought cheap, always stretching. A cracked molar you can't afford to fix. A winter coat you patch instead of replace. You calculate every purchase twice. Carry debt like a shadow that grows longer no matter how fast you walk. You buy supplies out of pocket, markers, paper, tissues, snacks, because no one else will, because the machine runs on sacrifice. The receipt total glares up at you, $89.14, money that should have gone to food, to bills, to breathing room. Instead, it goes into the classroom, swallowed whole. You tell yourself it's for them, but your fridge is emptier for it. Time bends out of shape. Bells dictate the hours, shrill, metallic, breaking your day into pieces that never add up to enough. 45 minutes to teach, 30 for lunch, another 45, another. You measure your life in increments that leave no space between. At home, the papers spill across the table, multiplying like bacteria. You grade until your eyes blur, until you can't tell one student's handwriting from another's. You wake up and the pile is still there. Weekends dissolve into planning, Sunday nights into dread. You lose the ability to tell where one day ends and the next begins. The clock ticks steadily, indifferent, slicing time into units you can't keep. Relationships shrink under the weight. Friends stop calling because you cancel too often. Family gathers without you because you're always buried under paper. Even when you show up, you're not fully there. Your mind drifts to tomorrow's lesson, to the quiz you haven't written, to the meeting waiting on Monday. Conversations become background noise. Birthdays pass. Dinners end too quickly because you have to get back to grading. Intimacy fades, touch replaced by exhaustion, laughter by silence. You start to feel like a visitor in your own life, present in body but absent in spirit. The people around you notice, then stop asking. Eventually, they stop expecting. The motifs haunt you through it all. Ink stains become permanent, little bruises on your skin that no soap can wash away. Paper towers higher, sliding off tables, covering counters, spilling onto floors. A physical reminder of the job's endless appetite. The clock ticks louder in the silence, marking your hours, your days, your years, until you can't tell if you're listening to time passing or to yourself disappearing. The grind ledger doesn't balance. You give your body, your mind, your money, your time, your relationships. The machine records it all, cold and efficient, without gratitude, without mercy. You hope one day it will even out. It doesn't. The cost is always greater than the return, and you keep paying anyway. At some point, you stop being a name. You become numbers on a screen. Your performance is graphed, color-coded, displayed in staff meetings where no one looks you in the eye. Students' test scores become your reflection. Growth percentages determine your worth. The language shifts, no longer about who you are, but about what you produce. Output, data, efficiency. The dashboards arrive in your inbox at midnight, sterile grids of numbers and arrows. You scroll through them in the glow of your phone, the clock flashing 12:47 a.m., your eyes burning. Red cells mean you failed, green cells mean you survived, nothing in between. The complexity of your days, the sweat in your shirt, the ache in your back, the ink staining your hands, compressed into digits that strip away every trace of you. Administrators speak of student outcomes and performance indicators, and your name is absent from the conversation. You are a column on a spreadsheet, ranked against others. They measure you by scores that ignore hunger, sleep deprivation, fractured homes, and all the shadows students carry into your room. None of it matters. The paper on your desk multiplies, the ink stains deepen, the clock ticks anyway, the numbers remain. You feel yourself shrinking, not in body but in presence. The things that once made you whole, your voice, your patience, your humor, don't show up in the data, so they don't count. You could lose them entirely and the machine wouldn't notice. What it notices are scores, attendance rates, discipline referrals. You are no longer a teacher. You are a variable, a calculation, a result to be improved or replaced. It is a strange kind of erasure, one that leaves you standing, but hollow. You speak, you move, you grade, but the machine sees only numbers, and after a while, so do you. It happens in silence, not in front of a class, not in a meeting, but alone. Late evening, long after the building has emptied. You sit in your car, engine off, keys cold in your palm. The parking lot lights flicker, buzzing faintly, painting everything in a dull yellow. The air is heavy, damp, and you don't move. You just stare through the windshield at nothing. The papers sit on the passenger seat, stacked and restless, sliding a little when you shift your weight. You don't reach for them. You don't have the strength. The ink stains on your fingertips feel darker tonight, almost black, and when you rub your thumb against them, the marks don't fade. They might as well be part of your skin now. You lean back, and the clock on the dashboard glows. 10:12 p.m. The same green digits you've watched 100 nights before, each one a reminder that you've lost another day. The building behind you hums with its after-hours life, air vents sighing, radiators clicking, the low hum of electricity in walls that will stand long after you're gone. The world feels indifferent, and in that indifference, you break. No tears, not this time, just a hollowing, a sudden realization that there is nothing left to give, and yet tomorrow you will still show up. The collapse is not loud. It's a quiet surrender that no one else will notice. The weight presses into your chest, and you feel smaller than ever, a body slumped in a car seat, surrounded by the debris of your own devotion. You think of the years ahead, stretched thin and identical, the clock ticking through every lesson, the paper multiplying across every surface, the ink bleeding deeper into your skin. The motifs circle back like vultures, reminding you of the cage you built, the one you entered willingly, the one that will not let you go. You close your eyes, but the clock keeps glowing behind your eyelids. You grip the steering wheel, knuckles pale, as if the car might drive itself away. It doesn't. You stay there, listening to the machine echo through the silence, waiting for a strength that doesn't come. And then, when the air grows colder and your breath fogs the window, you finally start the engine, not because you want to, but because you know you have to. Tomorrow waits, and the machine does not forgive pauses. You try to remember who you were before this role consumed you. You search for the person who once believed teaching would be different, who carried books like treasures and thought knowledge might change the world. That version of you felt awake, alive, brimming with possibilities. You stood in front of a classroom for the first time and believed you had stepped into purpose. You thought the ink on your fingers meant creativity. The paper on your desk meant progress. The clock above the board meant structure. Now those same things mean something else. Ink stains are no longer marks of passion, but scars of repetition, proof of hours lost to grading work that blurs together. Paper doesn't symbolize progress anymore. It's weight, it's clutter, it's a demand that never stops multiplying. The clock doesn't steady you. It mocks you, ticking through days that no longer belong to you. You wonder who you are without the role. If the machine spat you out tomorrow, would you still exist? The question sits heavy. Your identity has been folded so tightly into the job that without it, you fear you'd unravel. And yet, within it, you already have. The young version of you believed you'd make a difference. The current version stares at the ceiling at night, eyes dry, heart dull, and wonders if difference was ever possible at all. The calling you once felt like fire has become a cage of routines, forms, and expectations. You can't separate where you end and where the job begins. What you used to call dedication is now erosion, a slow quiet wearing down until you are only a shadow of who you were meant to be. There is no dramatic ending, no sudden release, just the quiet truth that settles in the spaces between bells. You still wake up before dawn, body aching, mind heavy. You still pack the bag, still carry the weight, still watch the clock slice your day into pieces too small to hold a life. The world outside believes you're noble, that your sacrifices mean something permanent. Inside, you know they mean you are disappearing 1 hour at a time. The ink on your hands, The paper stacked around you, the ticking clock above your head, they were once signs of purpose. Now they are reminders of what you've lost. You think of who you might have been if you had chosen differently, but the thought drifts away as quickly as it comes. What's left is the steady rhythm of work that doesn't end, devotion that isn't noticed, years that vanish without sound. And that's why it sucks to be a teacher. If you're ready to stop trading your life for a paycheck, check the links in the description. You'll find step-by-step resources to start your own faceless YouTube channel. No camera, no boss, no commute. Escape the rat race and start your way out today.